Okay, welcome everybody. Great to
Hi.
have everybody here and good to see some familiar faces. Today we have a very special live training and we're going to learn how to ship into Amazon Japan to get your business started. I'm here with our friend Mr. Toshitaka. Welcome. How are you?
Hey guys, great seeing everybody.
Yes, great to see everybody. And then so this is a special webinar that we have for Seven Figure Seller Summit. And as some of you guys do know, we had a live event in April in Tokyo earlier this year, in-person event talking about Amazon, selling in Amazon Japan. And great that we have some familiar faces here in the Zoom room as well. So welcome to Mark. And welcome Carol's here as well, Sumire, and some others. So welcome, guys. Okay, so before we get started, I'm going to introduce Toshitaka-san in just 1 minute. So today, our main goal is to help you guys better understand the whole process, how to ship into Japan, how to get your business started selling into Japan. And it's going to be a question and answer session. So we will not have a slide presentation, and I have some pre-selected questions from you guys. I think about 50 of you guys registered online, and the replay will be available as well. But if you have any questions, those of you that are joining us live, please raise your hand or please type it in the chat, and then we'll also address those questions in the order they're received. Okay, so before we get started, I'd like to first introduce our friend, Mr. Toshitaka. Yes.
And so we were yesterday, and we understand that Rebecca Rush will be part of this.
Your audio is coming in very light. I'm not sure who that's speaking. Is it Matthew or is it Mark? I'm not sure.
I think it's Mark. Okay.
Okay. And then there will be question and answer time as well. So I encourage you to raise your hand or put your question in the chat. And then after we do the intro, we'll go into the question and answer session. All right, guys. Okay. First, I'd like to introduce our friend, Mr. Toshitaka from Yunige. And Yunige is a Japan-based importer of record and logistics company. And they also were supporting us and sponsoring us at the platinum level at Seven Figure Seller Japan Mastermind. Not only that, they really specialize in helping Amazon sellers, e-commerce business owners import into Japan. They can provide the IOR service. They can also help you with your compliance questions. If you have certain questions about certification, what do I need for my product? Now is a great chance for you to get those questions answered. All right. So a quick introduction of Mr. Toshitaka. He has over 20 years experience in overseas product development in the pet industry, and at the same time importing the items to Japan. He is currently based in Japan in Osaka, and he has 10 years also experience in importing and exporting food items, cosmetics, raw material, automobiles, heavy machinery. So he has a wealth of experience across many different industries. And these experiences really help them with accuracy and speed when it comes to the whole compliance, regulated importing, and distribution process into Japan. All right. So let's go ahead and get into the questions. So I have pre-selected questions already, but if you guys have any questions, feel free to drop it into the chat and we will be monitoring that. And then also a quick shout out to a couple of our friends in the audience. Welcome, Nick. And good to have you here as well. So, I mean, Nick is also one of our speakers from the Japan Mastermind and multiple seven-figure seller. He helps other brands as well sell into Japan. So I think some of you guys beyond shipping, if you do have some selling questions, let's save those to the end. Maybe Nick or some of the others, like Mark also is an expert when it comes to Rakuten. He's doing a lot of stuff on Rakuten. So we have some time at the end for that as well. Okay. So first off, the first question, Mr. Toshitaka. Okay, my first question is, why is it so important to pay attention about shipping into Japan, especially for Amazon sellers?
Gary, one more time, your voice was a bit choppy. Could you repeat that? Sorry.
Okay, yeah. So why is it so important to pay attention into shipping and importing into Japan, especially for Amazon sellers? What's different, compared to, let's say, importing to the US or other countries?
Okay. One big reason I think is the Japanese language. This is a very big barrier, and when coming into Japan, importer, the custom clearance, a lot of the times people related in that field are not all that fluent in English, and so explaining your items, going through a custom clearance sometimes is a hassle, and so that's one barrier, I think. But again, you have all your Japanese rules, you have your regulations. Most of the laws and regulations are written out in Japanese. And so again, the way you look at it, the way you understand it, sometimes is a bit daunting because it's Japanese. But I believe that is one of the bigger or major reasons.
Yeah, so the language barrier. Okay, that's a big one. And then how about in terms of the import process? What's basically the first step that sellers have to take when it comes to importing in Japan? Let's say they're already selling in the US and they want to launch their product into Japan. What steps should they take?
Okay. Most of the time, I explain this in two parts. So one, you have to worry about custom clearance, and the next about distribution, circulation, selling the item in Japan, making sure that everything's complied. So there are a lot of products that don't really need a lot of compliance related regulations or paperwork documents when custom clearing. So that can come in, quite simply. Let's say for apparel items, beddings, these type of items, you don't really need a lot of checking on the custom side. So you'll have no issues in getting it custom cleared. However, once it comes into Japan, if it's not properly labeled, I have heard cases where, like, apparel items, they were not labeled with the Japanese label that was needed. That was found out, and later that was all recollected, and so you have all these issues after it goes in. Also, we've had cases where they were selling well on Amazon, and then all of a sudden Amazon stopped their listing or suspended their account because of some type of compliance related reasons for selling in Japan. So one thing I make sure is I understand what the product is, look at the compliance related rules and regulations, explain to the sellers. If it's something custom related, we can handle that before custom clearance. And if it's for distribution, we can also help that as well. But I try to make sure that the sellers are aware of these rules.
Excellent. So sellers have to be aware of the whole customs and certification. And I know that there's obviously like many different categories. Is there a rule of thumb? Like, what are the most sensitive categories that draw the most scrutiny from the Japan customs?
Okay. Well, we do specialize in cosmetics, and selling cosmetic items in Japan, you need a license, and they all have to be pre-registered prior to coming into Japan. So cosmetic items definitely will need a registration, and the importer will need a license. So of course we can help you on that. Other items would be food related. So all food items need to be food registered upon import, and anything that is related to food. So like kitchenware, utensils, these things that come in direct contact with food will also need a registration as well. Electronic items and other, not just customs, but distribution related would be like detergents, bedding, apparel. All these items will need some type of rules or regulation related labels or something when coming into Japan.
Excellent. Okay. So let's say, for example, I know that some of the people in the room today, they asked me previously some questions about their particular product, importing in Japan, what sort of certification we need. Does anybody have a question right now? I'd like to give them an opportunity to raise their hand. If you have a specific product you want to import into Japan, you can ask. Toshitaka. There was one question in the chat. YY DM'd me. Can Toshitaka help with food registration? I have a food product that is manuka honey lozenges from New Zealand. What do you say?
Yes, definitely. Manuka honey, we've had experience for getting honey in from Australia, Canada, and I think the US as well. So yeah, definitely honey. However, I will need special documents. In Japan, they are very strict about honey. They make sure that it is natural honey and not artificial honey. So you'll have to give me COAs for the honey itself, and we'll have to go through document processes. But fortunately for now, there is no testing for honey, so it's probably a smooth ride as long as the documents are all suffice.
Okay, excellent. And YY, I encourage you to follow up with Mr. Toshitaka afterwards. So why don't we, Toshitaka, what's the best contact method to reach you? We'll just drop that in the chat for people that want to save that first as we go forward. So we'll give him a minute to do that. And
okay.
And YY said it's so the email is service@yunige.info. So service@yunrge.info. So if you'd like to reach out, that's the best way. Okay. And YY follow-up asks, it can be categorized under confectionery for your information. Okay. So YY, why don't you go ahead and you can follow up with Toshitaka about like some of the details. But on a high level, it seems that it can be imported, but you need some special documentation. You know, it has to be official. It has to be natural. Okay. All right. So next question is from Matt. And I plan to sell elder care products on Amazon Japan, say for pain relief items. What kind of documentation certification required tests are required? Thank you. Is that enough info for you, Toshitaka? Or maybe Matt, if you want to unmute your mic and just tell us a little bit more details about what exactly that would be. Not sure if Matt's available to speak. What do you say, Toshitaka-san?
Well, yeah, it would be better if I get more detail on the product, but pain relief, that word itself, it becomes a medical claim word. And so I'm not really sure, you know, if it's something that is taken like a supplement or something, but let's say it was a supplement and it does something to relieve pains. Using that word itself will automatically switch the medical claim, and so that itself would be not possible. But if you remove that, as long as the ingredient is okay, the supplement might be importable as a food item. If you're talking about cream, again, if it's just a cream for cosmetic purposes, that's okay. But once you put the word pain relief in it, it becomes a quasi-drug or a medical drug. And unfortunately, we do not have a medical license, so we cannot import medical drugs or quasi-drugs. However, even if we did, getting the documents, paying the money, all of the evidence and whatever to get these approved to import into Japan, most of the time is not worth it for some of the smaller companies. And so if you're really looking into items like this, sometimes it's better to make it in Japan. I can help out with doing OEM or PB items in Japan. So it will be better to make it in Japan, but a lot of times there will be a lot of issues when medical claims are written or is advertised on a product.
Interesting. Okay. And Matt says, thank you. So it sounds like the word pain, that's kind of like a trigger word, right? Anytime you use that language in Japan, that triggers more scrutiny, more testing, etc. Is that right?
Yes, that is right. I've had a lot of CBD items that were like pain related, and so as long as they take that word out, we can register it as a cosmetic items, but again, sometimes it defeats the purpose because, you know, they really want to use that to relieve pain, but they can't write it. And so,
Yeah.
yeah, a line has to be drawn there.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. Excellent. So if you guys have any more questions, feel free to drop it in the chat. Let's keep going, guys. And in terms of certification, Toshitaka, if let's say, what if we use the example of the manuka honey lozenges from YY earlier? What sort of certification would they need to import into Japan?
Okay, so for honey, or let's say general food items, first off, I would like the ingredients list, the full ingredients list. And I have to make sure that all of the ingredients are complied with the Japanese laws, especially additives and like flavoring, food coloring. These things will be needed. So first, if you can send me the list, I can check it up, make sure that everything is okay. And if so, then we'll go to the next process, which most of the time will be the production flow chart. I need the production flow chart to make sure that everything is in order with the Japanese rules again. After receiving these documents, normally what we do is we will prepare all of the documents that we need to present to quarantine. And then we will request a small import, small shipping import to be done so that we can make sure that it is importable and there is no issues. But sometimes quarantine will go back and forth with us with questions, or maybe they will request tests. And so please be aware that the items might be stuck at port for a week, 2 weeks, you know, sometimes maybe close to a month. So I would like to make sure that the warehouse storage fee is not that expensive. So a small shipment would probably be best for the first shipment. After that's done, the next process is quite simple. They can send a pallet, a container load of the items, because we're more confident that it will pass through food registration. So you know, going through it really simple. These will be the processes: getting the ingredients list, production flow chart, letting us make sure that the documents are ready, and then start import.
Excellent. Okay. And in terms of testing, we had another question. How much does the test cost? How long does it take? And who do we contact to do the testing?
Okay. For food registration, normally the testing will be done upon import. Unfortunately, the testing cannot be done prior to import. However, there are exceptions. For instance, kitchen-related items, plastics. Sometimes we can do the testings on before it comes into Japan, but I can go into further detail for items like that. But normally for food items, it will have to be done on import, and we will be responsible for getting everything done. There will be a fee if testing is required, and the fees may vary anywhere from like 200 to 400 per test. And so depending on how many tests we have to do, that fee will add on. But most of the time for food, these are tests that are valid for a year, so an annual renewal will be needed. But after that, within the valid date, they can import as many times as they want.
I see. All right. And moving on to customs duties fees. Can you give us an overview of how are customs duties calculated? And then also, if, let's say, okay, obviously, I think one advantage, if I can just add, of shipping into Japan is, let's say if you're manufacturing in China, maybe if I could just get a show of hands, like where are you manufacturing your product right now? Are you manufacturing in China, in India, in Mexico, in Vietnam, or US? If you can just drop in the chat where you're manufacturing from, so I know, like, you know, where we're coming from. Okay, but on or one investment is shipping into Japan, let's say from China, there's no tariff, right? The quote unquote Trump duties that does not exist from China to Japan. So immediately you save 25%, if not more, off the bat. Okay. And number two, the advantage of shipping into Japan is the time. It's a lot shorter. So if we just look at the world map, Japan is China's neighbor, right? So it literally can just take like, how long does a ship normally take? Let's say from Port of Shanghai to get into like to Tokyo or another port in Japan. How long does that take?
Couple of days at the most, about a week.
Yeah.
If not a couple of days, yeah.
Yeah. So, a lot of our Japan mastermind attendees were like fully amazed by that. I mean, like people like Brandon Young was saying, like, that's insane. Like, just imagine like the cash flow that you're saving, that you don't have to order like 3 months inventory, and you can cut that down. So you can turn your cash flow a lot quicker. Okay. So I think those are two huge advantages. No tariff, immediately lower your landed cost as well as the time savings. And I think the shipping cost advantage as well. But can you give us an overview of customs duties in Japan? How does that work? Is it based on the FOB landed cost, or some people are saying it's based on the actual retail cost of your Amazon listing? Can you give us some more insight on that? Toshitaka-san?
Okay. So here it gets very sensitive, and I would like to talk one-on-one with the sellers when talking about invoice values. But most of the time, since we are the IOR, we will present the invoice value presented by the seller. And normally for duty exemptions, depending on the country, we will need special documents, but again, we will present that as the importer of record and try to get the exemption. So TPP, EPA, and for China, I think it's RCEP. There's special rules and special documents. So as long as these documents are ready and are obtained, then we will present it. Of course, prior to that, if they can give us the ASIN or listing of the product, I can check on the HS code, make sure that that would be the code used in Japan. I can give the duty tax, and if there is an exemption that can be applied, I will, guide everybody through all of the documents that are needed. But with that said, these things can be done as an IOR, and we will be held responsible for doing all of that, but we do have experience in that field.
Yeah. When you talk about like TPP and these type of trade deals, I think not everybody is as well versed as you are. Can you just explain, are there like, duty-free countries that you can import to Japan?
Yes, so there's a lot of duty-free countries now. And let's say a big example would be wine from the EU. Originally, wine was all duty taxed, but all of a sudden for EU, everything became free. And so you're seeing more and more European wines in Japan. Before that, it was a lot of Chile wines. It was a lot of California wines, Australian wines. The tax for California wines is going down because of the US-Japan treaty. And so I think it will be tax-free in about a couple of years, maybe. But right now, I think it was something like 6 point something or 3 point something. So depending on the product, and especially for the US, year after year, the duty tax value for some items is reducing. So for one, I had a supplement item. Originally, it was around 15%. Next year, it was like 9%. Then it went to 6%. I think it's like 3% or 1 point some percent now with the US and Japan treaty. And probably a year or two later, it will be free. So depending on items, as long as the documents are obtained, they have the advantage.
Okay. And then I also heard that if you're manufacturing in Thailand, importing to Japan and other Southeast Asian countries, I'm not sure about Vietnam. Is that true as well? Is that it's duty free?
Yes, Thailand is definitely duty free. I think there's a lot of items from India also that are duty free. And so,
interesting.
Yes.
Yeah. So for those of you guys already selling, as we're looking at ways to increase our profitability. One of the best ways is to take a closer look at your supply chain, because supply chain, it may not be as sexy as PPC and launch strategy, but that's actually where the real money is made. It's actually like on the buying, not just on the selling, right? So I was talking to a CEO of a sourcing company the other day, and then he said, what he's doing to help these sellers is optimizing their sourcing, optimizing their supply chain. So besides China, if they source from another country, let's say, for example, Vietnam, even though like the final product cost may be similar or like a little savings, if you consider, let's say, the no tariffs, right? If it's duty free, and if you're manufacturing in China, you going to the US, it's like 25%, some tariff plus the duty, maybe another 17%, and maybe you're getting duty free with Japan versus manufacturing in Vietnam. You can get cost savings that way. So I hope that makes sense for you guys, because Japan has many treaties, like the TPP, the Trans-Pacific Protocol. They have these deals with other countries that you can take advantage of if you know what you're doing, because most people they overlook this. So that's another reason why I think it's important. Talk to an expert importing, customs duty expert like Yunige to help you lower those fees. All right. Okay, question from Carol. Can we get a list of countries that have a duty-free agreement with Japan? That's an excellent question.
Yes and no. So like TPP countries that are in TPP or with the EPA treaty, there's some countries that are already listed. I can give a list, but that's not going to be for all of the items. So for instance, if they can give me some HS codes or some categories, I can look it up and then return back which countries would be duty free or what the duties would be for each country.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it also depends on a case by case basis, because some of the duty free policies is not just like a blanket everything, right? Maybe there are certain things are duty free and certain things may be different tax rates. So it all boils down to the HS code. So Carol, you can share the HS code with your importer, like Toshitaka, for example. They can give you a detailed breakdown, and they may be able to optimize it because there's different categories that you can consider your product. I mean, obviously legally, you were not doing anything like against the law, but to optimize that, it's kind of like saving on your taxes, right? You want to do it the right way to lower your burden. So yeah, excellent. Any follow-up questions on that before we move forward to the next subtopic, guys?
Yeah, no, but yeah, I'll be happy to share any details concerning duties. So yeah, please contact me and I'll be happy to help.
Okay, and someone asked about overcharge duties. Like, do you have any strategies to reduce duties when entering Japan?
The only thing I can say is, again, what we usually do is we make sure that we understand what the product is, what the duties are to start off, and if there's any way to get any exemptions or any discounts, and if so, we'll make sure that we have everything ready before it comes through customs, because once it goes through customs and once it's set in Japan, almost I would say 95% of the time, it's not going to come back. I know that in the US, you can go back and redo the duty payments and stuff, but in Japan, it's almost impossible. So getting it done right before it comes through custom clearance is the most important.
Great advice. Okay. So next question about delivery into Japan. What is the process for delivering products to FBA? And then I guess, okay, so this is a two-part question. The second part is, should a seller ship 100% into Amazon's FBA warehouse in Japan, or should they go to a 3PL and drip feed? What is your advice?
So ourselves being an IOR and the process being that we make sure that all the items come into our warehouse and then after that go to FBA. I know some people are asking why can't it go directly to FBA from the port, but because of custom reasons, we make sure that everything comes into our warehouse. Also, at the same time, for items that are coming in from China, a lot of times they're in container loads. And so you cannot send a full container to FBA. And so everything will need to be unloaded somewhere and then sent to FBA. One advantage for using our system or our services with 3PL is they can send a whole container to us. We can unload it, divan it, store a portion of it in our warehouse, and send the rest to FBA. And then when the time comes, replenish, giving us information, we'll send it again. The warehouse fees are much cheaper than what you will be paying at FBA. And another big advantage is you just need one shipment coming into Japan. So, but for smaller shipments, let's say a couple of boxes, still, even in that case, it needs to come into our warehouse. But most of the times the fees, they don't change that much. And again, like with the duty taxes and stuff, a lot of times they get the better advantage of doing that.
Who gets the better advantage of the duties?
The sellers will get the better advantage. If they use some type of ACP system going directly from the port to FBA, the delivery fee from the port to FBA might be cheap, but they'll be paying a lot for the duty fees if duty is applied. And so even if it comes into our warehouse, a lot of times there are a lot of advantages for using our services.
Okay, and for those that are not familiar, what is an ACP system?
Okay, an ACP is, okay, normally in Japan, the difference between an IOR and ACP, or the related part, is somebody in Japan needs to pay the taxes. Sales taxes, duty taxes, somebody needs to be held responsible for paying that. An ACP, if you register your company, you being the seller, which is a person outside of Japan, that person can be registered to be the importer or the person that pays the taxes here in Japan. So if you do not have an entity in Japan, you can use an ACP service so that you can be the person that's going to pay the taxes. However, for cosmetic items, food items, electrical items, these compliance related items, an ACP cannot be assigned and an ACP cannot be used to import. The IOR, in our case, first off, we will be the person held responsible for paying all the taxes. So we pay all the taxes upfront. Even if it is DDP, they still need somebody's name to be the person paying the taxes. And so that's what an IOR does, and that's how it is in our case.
Got it. Okay. So if I understand correctly, your recommendation for sellers is not to ship directly into Amazon FBA, but to ship to a warehouse. And the main reason is for the lower duties. And then also that way you can, what was the other advantage again? Can you recap?
Yeah, so for duties, another thing would be like sending us a container load, temporarily storing some of their items in our warehouse. Another thing would be using our service and using us as an IOR. We are able to explain to the customs officers what the product is. So a lot of times that results in a smoother custom clearance and less hassle, less issues. So maybe going through like, let's say an ACP service, the people that are receiving it, they might not be able to explain the product well, and they might get stuck at custom clearance.
Okay, excellent. So another person had a question. Will I be able to store my items in the warehouse and trickle inbound into FBA?
With us, yes.
Okay. And then Carol asked, where can we get a price listing of your services? 3PL, handling customs, duties, IOR, etc.
Yes, I would be happy to share price list, costs. Send me a shout out, and I'll inform that. but a lot of times the price list is, there's just a lot of numbers there and it's very difficult to understand. So best would be if they can give me, like, let's say a shipment they did in the past, or an example shipment or a simulation. I can easily calculate a quotation and send it back, giving all the costs and need fees that would be related to that shipment.
Okay, so please follow up with Toshitaka-san, Carol, to get all of those details. All right, and Matt, I had a question. May I know the Japan import regulations on wooden products, please? Are there any specific common pitfalls to look out for? Wooden products.
Wooden items. Yes, there's one thing we all need to understand is the CITES, the Washington Treaty. So for, let's say, a popular wood item would be teak, T-E-A-K, and this wood is used a lot in furnitures, but let's say African teak is prohibited for import. So for wooden items, a lot of times I would need to know what type of wood is used. If it's just general wood, most of the times it's okay, but if it's special wood, I will need to know what it is. Again, from India, sometimes people ask about sandalwood. Most of the times these will need some type of documents to get in. And if it's already a product that is, let's say, it's already made up into a product. So a furniture would be okay, but if it's just a log, then we will have to go through quarantine again. So special documents will be needed for just raw wood. Again, just send me the details of the product, and I'll be able to get back with needed documents or regulations.
Okay, and is there the same fumigation requirement as the U.S. for any wood products imported into Japan?
It would depend on how that product is. So like if it's a packaged product, most of the times no. But if it's something like raw wood, then yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, so let's keep going. In terms of more shipping questions that we received, I heard that FBA Japan, okay, we already answered. FBA Japan does not accept containers, right? So
No.
you're gonna have to use someone like a Yunige to help you unload that before you ship it in. Another person asked about returns. Apparently, FBA needs to return my items for various reasons. I wish I had to go to a warehouse in Japan. What should I do?
Yes, that's a very good question. That's something that we get asked a lot. Let's say for special reasons, let's say the FNSKU was not labeled correctly, or they had issues and it needs to be returned somewhere. Even if they did not use our service, if they can give me a notice, then I will be happy to give information of our warehouse where they can return it. Our warehouse is located in Osaka and Tokyo. And so giving that information, they can have the return sent to the warehouse. Most of the times in Japan, I think this is something that's done all over, but Amazon does not send all of the returns all at once. It like comes in bits and pieces. And so most of the time what we do is we will share some type of spreadsheet to notify the sellers that this has arrived, this has arrived. If that's the full count, after that, we can do inspections, or we can send photos and then discuss on what to do. If there's some type of labeling needed, we can help out on that. If you want to send the whole thing to, let's say, a different country, we can export as well. FBA, of course, we can return it back to FBA. So most of the things we can do in our warehouse, and we will be happy to provide that service. But yes, returns can be sent to our warehouse.
Excellent. Okay. Another question that we had is, let me see. Okay, I think another advantage that we didn't talk about. Okay, putting your product in a 3PL in Japan is this way you're not just limiting yourself just to selling on Amazon, right? So let's say if you're selling on Amazon in Japan, you want to expand your business, you can sell on other platforms. So Toshitaka, do you have any recommendations, what your clients are doing, what besides selling on Amazon?
Yes, definitely. Thank you for that. Yes, using our warehouse 3PL system, not only can they send the items to FBA, but if they're able to do business with other wholesalers in Japan, we'll be happy to ship the items from our warehouse to the wholesalers here in Japan. There's other platforms like Q10, Rakuten, Yahoo Shopping, and we have our account as well. So if they would like to try out these markets or these platforms, I will be happy to connect them to our selling team, which they can list their products in our account and be sold on our account and try the market out. If they're, if they like it, maybe they can consult with somebody that can help out with the Rakuten account. And later on, if that item needs to be sent out from our warehouse to, let's say, B2C, we can do that as well. We can repack everything and put them in small boxes and then send them out directly to B2C. Also, our selling team, they do offline selling to Japanese companies. And so if they would like, we can introduce their items to the offline market and try to sell it there as well. So there's many opportunities that they can do using our 3PL system as well.
Excellent. So by B2C, that means that let's say you're selling on Rakuten or you're selling on your own site or like a Shopify store, you made a sale into Japan, then Yunige's warehouse can do the order fulfillment of that one order. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct. And in the past also, we've had clients or sellers do the crowdfunding, like Kickstarter type, Japanese Kickstarter type platforms. And so they would send the shipment to us, we would hold on to it, and then all of a sudden we would have to send like a couple of thousand units all at once to B2C, but that can be done as well.
Excellent. Okay. So moving forward, we had part 3 of our questions relate to compliance. Someone had a question about cosmetic samples. Okay. Can I send cosmetic samples to Japan for giveaways without registration?
Okay, that's another question that's asked a lot. People say it's just a sample. They just want to give it to somebody for trial. But in Japan, the Japanese law says that anything that anybody uses, whether it was paid for or a sample, needs to be completely labeled. All the compliance need to be complied, and the cosmetic item itself needs to be registered. So what happens is, let's say somebody used the sample and they had issues, somebody has to be held responsible. So whether they bought it or not, the same responsibility is laid out to all the items. So even if they want to give the samples away at some type of event, prior to that, everything needs to be properly labeled and needs to be registered and needs to be properly imported. So they have to go through the whole process.
Okay. And what about B2C, like business to consumer? Will that need registration?
If they're sending the items from outside of Japan directly to B2C, then the compliance is not needed. So as long as the item is not illegal, so illegal drugs, of course, you cannot send B2C. But even if it's a medical item, a prescription item, it can be sent directly to the consumer as long as it's sent from outside of Japan. So if you're going to send directly from the US to Japan, that's okay. However, one disadvantage is that that item cannot be returned and not be resold in Japan. So if the consumer does not is not happy with the item and he wants to return it, he has to return it back to the US or has to dispose it. It cannot be sent to our warehouse and we cannot send it to FBA or resell it.
Okay, makes sense. Another question deals with pet food. Do I need special registrations for pet food that can be eaten by humans?
Okay. First off, pet foods the importer needs to register, making sure that pet food is importable. It needs to be labeled, describing which type of pet it's for. Is it for a cat? Is it for a dog? Is it for whatever? And I need to write down all of the ingredients in Japanese with a person held responsible or importer's name on it. So as long as that's done, pet food is basically okay. A lot of the times the ingredients, there are no issues as long as it's not medical. And so most of the ingredients are okay. Even if it's not okay for human consumption, for pets, it is okay. However, if it goes the other way around, let's say somebody wanted to import beef jerky for dogs, and that beef jerky was absolutely human consumable, sometimes you'll have issues at customs because somebody might be trying to smuggle that beef jerky, saying it's a pet food and trying to get away with the duties. So at times, if it can be consumed by humans, sometimes the custom clearance, they'll say this is not a pet food, this is a regular meat item, it will be classified as that. But even after that, it can be sold as a pet food. And there are a lot of pet foods that are being sold that way. So if it's something that cannot be consumed by humans, a lot of times it will be straightforward, that's pet food. But if there's some items that are that humans can consume, it can be sold as a pet food. But when coming into customs, coming in to Japan at customs, the duty will change.
Okay, excellent. Thank you. I have a couple of reader submitted questions for people that registered and may not have been able to join live. Can you speak a little about packaging in Japanese? What are the requirements for packaging?
For packaging of general items or what kind of items?
Let's say general, because I don't have a specific example from this person.
Okay, well, from my experience, if they are going to sell offline, of course, packaging is extremely important. Here in Japan, for many reasons, the Japanese people, they like to make sure that the packaging is 100%, clean and dandy, even though they're going to throw it away. So if there's like a scratch on it, if there's a dent on it, they're not satisfied and they might return it. So keeping the packaging clean and nice is really important. But if it was on the shelf, now, if you go to stores in Japan, sometimes you'll see dented drink cans, juice, beer. These cans, if they have a dent on it, it's sold at a discount price. It's not about the expiration date or anything. It's just because it has a dent in it. So these real small things that Japanese people really do take into consideration. So I would say keeping your packaging clean is really important. But for FBA or for Amazon selling items, I've noticed that a lot of times the packaging design does not need to be that fancy, because once they're convinced in buying that item, as long as there's no scratches or dents, a brown box package is sometimes okay. And so I guess it would depend on the product. I guess it would depend on the quality and the price. But you don't really have to go all out with the design on the package. But sometimes that might help in getting a better review. So I don't know, the Japanese people do do like really nice packaging, and so if that's something that is possible, I think that would be good. Again, for cosmetic items, food items, please make sure that there are no medical claims on the packaging. The words, even if it's in Japanese, English, Korean, Chinese, whatever, these will lead to issues. So make sure that there are no medical claims on them.
Okay. Excellent. Those. Okay, Matt commented, very interesting on the packaging topic. What about the owner's manual?
Yes, before, a lot of words, a lot of description on owner's manual was really needed. However, with like IKEA coming into Japan, everything is like pictures, no words. Sometimes that might be better for items. So if the product is, if you can explain how to use it just by using pictures, I think that would be enough. But if not, make sure that you use some type of company, or of course we can help out as well, but make sure that that person is fluent in Japanese, and the Japanese that is written there is really localized, not just Google translated.
Yeah. Okay, excellent. There's also stuff that you can do with insert cards, QR codes to get customers, contact info to build an audience. But that's more advanced outside the scope of today's topic. But all right, great job. So we just have a couple minutes left, guys. Before we go, I wanted to share a special offer that Toshitaka-san and the team at Yunige very generously prepared for our audience today. If you are interested in importing to Japan and would like to contact them for some help, they're offering 50% off their service fee. So all you have to do is go to their URL that I'm going to put in the chat. It's service.yunige.info/7figure. So I'll spell that. Service, service.yunige.info/7figure. And then you'll get 50% off the service fee. And that obviously does not include freight costs and import taxes, right? So anything you'd like to add to that, Toshitaka?
No, yeah, please get in contact with us. Go to the site, the link, and there is a quick questionnaire. They can answer that, and we'll make sure that our staff get in contact with you, and we'll be happy to help out.
Okay, excellent. We did have a couple more questions that are not that related to shipping, but related to selling in Japan. Some people were asking about the Japan opportunity. So I know that Ian reached out to me, Ian from UK, yesterday, and he was referred to us from another Amazon selling community. And then he was asking about kind of gauging the size of the market in Japan. So we all know Japan is Amazon's fourth biggest marketplace, but at the same time, he's trying to use research tools like Helium, like Jungle Scout, like Data Dive, to get a better feel of, how big is this opportunity? So he used Helium and Jungle Scout, but the category data was not available. I don't know if anybody else in the room can comment on this, maybe Nick. Are there any other alternative software, or reliable method for pulling in competitor sales data to use for sales and inventory forecasting? Because they're considering selling in Japan. Let's say they're north of 7 figures, already selling in EU marketplace. Would anybody have some insight to share to Ian in the UK? I'm not sure if Nick is available to speak. Nick is in the call, but if not,
hey Gary.
Yeah. Hey Nick. Welcome, welcome.
Hey. Yeah. Hey. Just as a quick thing to add, kind of irrespective of the two main tools, Helium 10 and Jungle Scout, certainly Helium 10 is missing a lot of missing categories. Probably not the easiest thing to do. Maybe you could go through Toshitaka in some way, or someone like myself or someone else who's selling on Japan, and just try and get a couple of ASINs that you actually know the seller of. And I mean, it's kind of obvious, but look at the data and ask the seller, how many are you selling? And just try and gauge how close you think it will be for your particular category that you're in. The tools often have a problem, especially when it comes to variations. It needs to be very careful with. Often it will combine all the variations as the selling price. So as the quantity being sold, which would be very misleading. So if there's some way you can speak to a seller and actually get a couple of ASINs, hopefully in the category that you want to sell in, just to kind of gauge it, that will probably help. And another thing that everyone's probably very well aware of, but very low selling items, very high selling items tend to be quite far off. The middler selling items kind of tend to about 100 is generally closer when it comes to the data. But the data can be pretty good for Japan. I will add that.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I know that Ian shared with me in private that they're doing a lot of SKUs, like dozens of SKUs in all different categories, and they're in the US and they're considering entering Europe next month. So yeah, maybe they can reach out to someone like Yunige to get some more insight, or even someone like Nick to get some more insight. All right, and thank you for that question, Ian. And then to Loiwa, yes, there will be a replay. So if you RSVP, we have your email. We will email you the replay. It will be on our YouTube channel at 7 Figure Sellers. All right. So any parting words, Toshitaka-san? I mean, we covered a lot today. Any parting words, or as I like to put it, with the 80-20 rule, I try to distill everything down to maybe the number one thing that sellers should take into account as they're shipping into Japan. I mean, what would be your number one recommendation?
Well, number one recommendation, Gary, thank you very much for inviting me here. Gary's number one recommendation for me. Yeah, Japan is, I think, a very good market. I think it's still growing, especially with the COVID situation. More and more people are more interested in buying on Amazon. It used to be Rakuten, but Amazon has, really kicked in. And so I think the opportunity here is extremely large. However, because of the Japanese language, there are a lot of barriers. There are a lot of issues. If you know about the regulations and rules, it's quite simple. But if not, it can be extremely annoying. And so we would love to help out. And just, simple questions. I would be more than happy to answer them. Please get in contact with me. And if we're able to do business, that would be, super fine. I'm super happy. Again, we have branches in Korea, in China, in India, in Dubai, Italy, UK, and the US. And so those countries as well will be more than happy to help out. We have staffs from all over the world and speak fluent in each language. So again, Japanese, English, Korean, will be more than happy to help out in these fields as well. And we're just looking forward to having more and more sellers come into Japan, making business. And if we're able to provide the service, that would be totally awesome.
Excellent. So thank you again, Toshitaka-san. I encourage you to follow up with Yunige for any help on your shipping into Japan. So I also like to thank Nick for weighing in as well. Nick Cat, one of our other speakers from the 7 Figure Seller Japan Mastermind. Thank you, Nick, for weighing in. And I hope this was helpful, guys. Good luck with selling into Japan. And we will see you guys at the next session. Bye, everyone.
All right, thank you.